Yesterday I had a meeting with the president. I got to see the president again this morning. I was that he said it was a good meeting as well to me. No predetermined ideas, but we're going to meet again about the debt ceiling and ways that we can find ways for savings and put ourselves on a path to balance. I think that's very important. If you look any of the latest polls, 74% of Americans believe there has to be some savings in what we're spending. We're at 120% of GDP, meaning our debt is larger than our economy. It's one of the greatest threats we have to this nation. And when I look at it, if you look at just the last 12 years in Congress, Republicans controlled 8 years of that and Democrats controlled 4. In the last 4 years that the Democrats controlled, they increased discretionary spending by 30%, more than $400 billion. Now, we had controlled it for twice as long. Discretionary spending during those 8 years didn't go up $1. They actually went down $10 billion. So I know we can find savings and get our economy stronger. When Republicans were in the majority, we were able to pass that tax package. Revenue into the government has never been higher. It's the highest revenue we've ever seen in. So it's not a revenue problem, it's a spending problem. So we'll continue to work on that. A couple interesting things happen on the floor right now. If you combine the number of Democrats who voted no and voted present, there's 100 Democrats that won't stand up against socialism. That's a real concern to me in America today. It's not just That wasn't a college vote on a college campus. That was a vote in the U.S. Congress that 100 Democrats couldn't say socialism was wrong. That's a scary point of view, but you also understand why we're in a spending problem that they are when they were in the majority. That's why you understand the challenges that we have here. So let me stop there and take any questions you might have. Yes, sir.
When the White House said that the president's open to talking about the debt ceiling and a separate discussion about ways to control spending.
Stimulus money boosted inflation by 2.6%, but it also likely prevented an even worse crisis, FET study finds. Welcome to Updates Area YouTube channel. The early days of the pandemic were among the darkest economic moments in the recent history of our low-income Americans, struggling with the unemployment and lost incomes. The Trump administration quickly provided relief by signing a $2 trillion package in March 2020 that sent $1,200 checks to every American who earned less than $75,000 along the enhanced unemployment and forgivable businesses loans. President Joe Biden followed with additional stimulus money. In total, American households received more than $472 million pandemic relief payments worth $803 billion. In total, nearly $5 trillion went to households, businesses, local governments, and other institutions. And the programs worked at least as far as their intended purpose. Material hardships in the U.S. household fell sharply as a result of the payments. A 2021 Census Bureau survey found, including for problems like malnutrition, mental health, and financial instability. For months, partisan debates have raged over whether the early pandemic stimulus fueled the past year's high inflation or if high prices were caused by the other factors like China's COVID lockdown, tangling supply chains. The answer, according to a new study by the St. Louis Fed, is the government stimulus was indeed responsible for some U.S. inflation. The authors found that 2.6 percentage points of the 7.9% 12-month inflation rate in February 2022 was due to stimulus. The authors found that stimulus payments led to sustainability, more demand for goods in the run-up to 2022, but industrial production at time was unable to keep up. The result was a higher amount of excess inflation, they said. By narrowing the study to February 2022, the authors excluded any analysis of more recent inflation rate. It also happened to largely miss the impact of Russia's invasion of Ukraine on February 24, which caused energy and food prices to soar. An economic lifeline While white-collar American workers retreated to their laptop and home offices to work remotely in 2020, many other Americans were not as lucky. Unemployment surged in the first half of 2020 and permanent business closures piled up. The number of people living below the poverty line ticked upward, and more than half of Americans expected to run out of savings before the year closed out. The wave of stimulus payments were an essential lifeline for low and moderate income Americans whose livelihoods were hit hardest by the pandemic, and may have helped lift nearly 12 million people out of poverty in 2020 alone. According to the Census Bureau, meanwhile, federal stimulus to business amounted to $1.7 trillion throughout the pandemic. This policy was successful at boosting consumption, which together with a relatively inelastic supply may have led to supply chain bottlenecks and price tensions, the author wrote. However, the FED's St. Louis and San Francisco studies both noted that social benefits of stimulus payment could potentially outweigh the negatives of inflation. One should also recognize the positive role played by the generous government support. Throughout this unprecedented crisis, the large spending supported a strong economic rebound, with both GDP and employment recovering at a remarkable pace, likely preventing worse outcomes despite the price pressure that may have resulted from the spending. The St. Louis authors wrote this story was originally featured on Fortune.com. So that was it for today, guys, and I hope you liked the video. Please leave a like and also hit the subscribe button. I'll see you next one. Bye bye.